Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I am back with a stepped up emergency card kit. If you missed it, this is the fall kit. It's kit 44 and we have sentiments with all kinds of punny goodness in circle sentiments with and without that printed circle. We have rectangle sentiments that are 2 1/4 by 1 1/4 inches and strip sentiments that are about 1/4 inch wide. There are tick marks on the rectangles and the strips to help you cut them out straight. And then we have our card sketch. So we're stepping up the card sketch and this is it. We have a little pie on the bottom for our half circle and then you press the button and it's almost like a neon light where it sort of glows behind there. We're going to do some fun stuff to pop that up, but you could skip the whole light situation. But if you're going to go through the trouble, you might as well create a trap door so you can replace the battery and you don't ever have to worry about the lights not working. To make this card, we're using the Oh My Pie die set from Trinity Stamps. And I have cut out all the different pieces. There are 2 squiggly dies and I sort of nested them together to create this pie crust. And I cut out 2 of them. I used the larger to cut out the blue piece. That's going to be my blueberry pie filling. And then I cut out the lattice as well. I've cut the lighter pieces from some cream cardstock and it's just a little too light. So I'm using some light brown ink to go over it and just make it look like it's been in the oven. And then because I was feeling fancy, I'm coming in where you can see those debossed lines and adding just a little bit of a very pale alcohol marker to emphasize the lattice of it. I am just drawing kind of a line where that deboss line is and then flicking outwards. It's going to dry back a little bit and it's just a tiny extra something, especially if you were skipping the light. This is a pretty quick and simple card and it says Yippee Pie Yay. So I thought that was kind of a fun way to step it up. I hadn't tried that before and it worked far more easily than I thought it would. On the blueberry piece, I'm actually using some blue ink and a little black ink because I don't have a navy, but navy would work beautifully there as well. This piece is an A2 panel, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm just creating an ombre up from the bottom in that middle ink, the violet ink. And I'm using my Spellbinders brush because it is super soft and fluffy, and that makes it really easy to blend into nothing. This is the Argyle stitched background from Trinity. I love how big it is. And I'm trying to line it up so that this geometric pattern is even on my cardstock. And so I actually tape it to the plate with a little bit of highlighter tape. Then I have all my pieces ready. So I have a card base, a white panel, my inked panel, my pie, a Yippee Pie Yay that I'm going to end up redoing. So I haven't shown that to you yet. And the shadow cut out of acetate, plus an easy light. And again, you could skip any piece of this and substitute other things. I'm really just trying to give you some inspiration, show you a method. That shimmer cardstock is 65 pounds and I'm gonna have the wires of my light behind it. So I am just layering this up on some heavier weight white cardstock to help me with assembly. Then we can start working on our pie. On my dies, I have marked 2 little notches of where it cuts so that it's easier to line up my pieces. So every time I cut out a piece, I use 2 little pencil marks to mark the exact same spot. And then I'm not rotating and rotating and looking for where do these fit together. I have stacked up my 2 outer crust pieces and then I will line it up on the blueberry piece. I look for that really deep M that's in there. That's the part I've marked on my die. And then I also marked it on the lattice. And the lattice to me is actually the hardest one to line up just because you don't get all of the grooves. And so this makes it super quick and easy. And I will just puzzle piece that right into the middle. You guys, I'm so impressed that it looks so much like a pie with all of that little extra alcohol ink on there. To create my Yippee Pie Yay, I am ink blending on some lavender cardstock with some purple ink. And this is a starter. I thought it was going to be enough, but by the time it dries, it lightens and I'm going to end up wanting more color. So after I have cut it out, I'm going to go ahead and put this on my grip mat instead of my glass mat. That will hold it in place so I'm not going to damage it while I'm coming in with more ink. I picked the darkest ink in the trio for this one, and that will finish up that top layer. I thought originally this piece was going to be teal, like an ombre of teal, so I had already stacked together 2 in teal while I wasn't about to recut them. We're going to light it up from behind, so I actually think it works to have a lighter color in a different color, slightly different, behind there. So I am going to have this stacked up 3 thick, okay? And I just use some wet glue, and then I wiggle until everything's in place. It's a single piece. Then I'm going to use my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive to add this onto a piece of heavyweight acetate. This is actually Grafix shrink film. It's like Shrinky Dink plastic, just a different brand, and it comes in a 50 pack. It's fairly affordable. I use it for almost all of my acetate needs. As long as you're not going to take heat to this, it is crystal clear and heavyweight, and I like it better than everything else. So that I set aside to dry, and I can start working on my lights. Easy lights are so easy. You just stick the battery in there and push the button. That's it, right? And there are 3 separate lights on there. So I'm using the Yippee Pie Yay that I made originally in teal to mark 3 places where those lights might be hidden behind the letters and that are evenly spaced out. I could have done this with the purple if I hadn't put it on the acetate already, but since I had, this worked a little bit easier. Then I can start poking holes where I just created those pencil marks. I'm using my Trinity Stamps pickup stick. It's a wax tip on one end and then my pokey tool on the other end, or my stabby tool. And I'm checking my lights to see, can you see through the holes that I've poked? And you can, but I wanted to make them a little bit bigger. And so I took my pokey tool and just stuck it all the way through, and then I get a slightly bigger hole. I'm using my pencil and going through those little holes, and then I can start arranging things and figuring out where it's all going to go. I know I want this battery pack and button behind the pie. There really isn't anywhere else to put it unless I want like a quadruple thick card, and I don't. So I am tracing a little box around my battery pack and then a little extra. We're going to create a door in the back. Okay, and so I'm bringing this to my sliding blade trimmer, and I'm going to cut 3 of those sides, right? It's a door, so it's got hinges. It's got to stay connected on the hinge side. If you don't have this kind of trimmer, you certainly could use a craft knife for this. You could even use your scissors for this, though it might not be quite as tidy. Then I'm going to bring it into my scoring tool and just kind of press and wiggle until I feel my scoring tool pop into one of those grooves, and then I will score the door. So I'm going to go ahead and fold that door back, and I'm bringing in my battery pack with the battery almost all the way out and making sure there's enough room to truly remove that battery based on the hole that I've created. And there is. So next I need to create another hole in our purple panel. I'm actually going to have my battery pack attached to the pie. So I need a door on the card base and a hole through this panel that's going to be nearly flush with that card base. And so I'm just going to bring that right back to my trimmer after I traced around the inside of that door, and I will cut until I can remove that piece. This one you won't see as much, and so you could even probably use your scissors and just kind of cut around that, and it wouldn't be a big deal. I'm double checking, making sure I'm covering up the entire hole, and I am. And now I can start adding my lights. I constantly turn them on just to double check and make sure that the lights are working the way that they're supposed to, that you can see them through the card the way that I intended. And so far, so good. I am taking the lights and I'm positioning them on top of my holes. There is a little yellow piece on the light. That's the actual light. So I'm making sure that that yellow piece is going to be facing through the hole. And then I just used some cleared tape to hold that onto my card. Since everything's looking really good, I'm going to go ahead and tape down my wires so they're nice and secure. I just like to loosely sort of coil them and tape them onto my card base. It's not pretty, friends, but it doesn't really matter. It's going to be fine. I've added removable adhesive on here just to hold it in place for now because I have some foam tape and figuring to do, and I want to make sure I can remove that if I need to. I am lining everything up and figuring out where on my pie I need to press because I want to stamp the word press in the right spot. This is not a really easy one to just write a note for. I can't say, hey, press on the star. And so I'm using a little removable sticker on there. It's like Post-it level adhesive. And I will mark that spot and the spot right below it, because I know you can press right below the sticker and it will be fine. I'm going to put it in my Misty because this stamp is tiny. It's from Pear Blossom. It's this beautiful scripty push. And I want to be able to stamp it twice very gently so that I don't squish it and then it looks kind of funky. To add my foam tape, this is the Pear Blossom Press World's Best Foam Tape. It is double thick and repositionable for 30 minutes. And so I've put it everywhere except where the battery pack is. I am double checking on the inside to make sure that the cutout where the battery comes out is on the correct side. And then I will press my pie down on top of it. I'm checking with the button, everything looks good. Then I will open the door and carefully lift up. I have double-sided adhesive on the back there, but I didn't adhere that to the pie yet. Actually, I did adhere that to the pie and then it was on the wrong spot and then I had to tear the whole thing apart. I edited that out for you today. I tear lots of cards apart for you guys. So I was like, you know what? We'll keep this one shorter. But double check, make sure your battery pack is facing the right way or is pushed to the correct side so that the battery can still come out. Then we're going to make some lifts for our acetate Yippee Pie Yay. I told you guys this was shrink plastic. So I have a 1/4 inch strip of that same shrink plastic. This is just a scrap and I heat it with my heating tool on top of my waffle flower stencil mat. And then as soon as it curls up all the way, I go ahead and press it down with my stamp block to flatten it out. And I can just use some scissors to cut that apart. I'm trying to show you on camera cutting this apart, but honestly, they're flying everywhere. So off camera, I cut some more. And then this is my favorite super glue. This is Loctite gel super glue, okay? And I am going to add some little pieces of that shrink plastic that's been all shrunk up onto the back. It is not as thick as your thinnest foam tape, but it's close and it's clear. Like you're gonna have a really hard time seeing this. At some point when we're kind of done, I will hold it up. And if you look really closely, you can see where it is. Could you attach these little pieces onto the back with regular glue? Maybe, probably, or some sticky tape. But this is gonna hold better and I'm very comfortable with it. I made jewelry for a decade. And so this is actually left over from that. I am just trying not to get it on my fingers and I'm using instead my favorite tweezers. This was brave. Friends, don't use your tweezers for this because if you glue your tweezers shut with this glue, you're gonna have a real hard time getting it off of there. In the end, I've got about 5 pieces on the bottom and 4, I think, pieces on the top, just enough to lift it, support it, and to help with that glow. And you need a little lift to get the glow. This dries pretty quickly, or at least mostly dries pretty quickly. So I'm figuring out where I want it on my card and I'm using a little bit of mint tape to remind myself when I go to set it down of where to set it back down, because I want to cover up the holes that I've poked in the background. Then I'm adding glue only onto those lifted areas where we have that little bit of plastic, lifting it up off the base of the card. And then I'm going to kind of press the light. It helps me to see where those holes are. And I will carefully lay this down. Once I set it onto paper, it really doesn't want to move. So just like you don't get wiggle time with super glue the way you do with regular glue. And again, maybe you could do this with like Nuvo Deluxe adhesive and just be really, really patient. But this was easier for me. I'm using a strip sentiment from the Fall Sentiments. I cut out a bunch of them in the last video. So I just grabbed this one that I already had cut. It was the font that I wanted. It's about a 1/4 inch thick and I will add some glue and then add it onto a 3/8 inch strip of cardstock. I create an equal margin on the top, bottom, and left, and then I can just trim off little slivers until it matches on the right. I'm going to double that up because I thought I was going to add it onto the pie. In the end, I put it on the inside of the card, but I'm torn. So I'm gonna sort of hover it over and audition it in a few places. Let me know where you would put this sentiment. It's gonna say, Yippee Pie Yay, leftovers are for quitters. And honestly, the push is kind of where I would have put it. And that's where I was struggling a little bit, but maybe right there. Maybe it could go right there. In the end, though, I'm just going to open it up and I'm going to put it in the top right, kind of all the way along the side with some removable adhesive so I can move that if I want to. That same removable adhesive right behind where the battery is, and that will adhere onto the battery pack and hold it shut. And that, my friends, finishes up our card for today. If you're interested in the free printable sentiments and card sketch, all I ask is that you subscribe to my channel and then ring that bell so you'll be notified every time there's a new free kit. There are 3 videos coming out next week with 2 more free kits. There's a big announcement coming out later today at 11 a.m. Central Time, so be sure to check back for that one. I'll list the schedule in the description box below with all of the supplies and the details that you need. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.